Good afternoon. This is Connor Exum of the Leon Trotsky Revolutionary Newsletter and Podcast that I write and edit. And I'm with Seth Sturm of West Virginia, political activist, podcaster, and theorist today of democracy's decline in America due to our friend Donald Trump. It's great to have you on board.
Thank you for having me, Connor. I'm excited to talk about it, even if it's depressing.
I don't think it's too depressing. I think we got a way out.
Hopefully.
Maybe. Hopefully. So, you were sending an email that you were really disturbed by his latest consolidation of power in the executive orders by now defining that he alone is going to be the one who can pick out which laws are really laws and how to interpret them. He and his toady in the Attorney General's office, Pam Bondi.
Right. You got all these. I mean, just really think about all of the institutions which he gets to decide now which areas they go into. I know that people have been talking about cryptocurrency, and the Securities and Exchange Commission was doing some sort of task force looking at those. And now they're going to be able to say, no, we don't want you to do that. That's not how we interpret that law. Equal opportunity, the EEOC. They could tell them, hey, gender issues or gender identity, we're not investigating that any longer.
Pretty much, I think we pretty much can say that transgender is not a big topic on his to-do list.
Right.
Unless it's, repressed.
To oppress them, right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And so that's what we're seeing. They're going to, I don't know. To me, this has been, I hear everyone saying it's a constitutional crisis. And so my takeaway has been, as somebody I exist because of forced assimilation policies.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother was removed from her home, put into a boarding school, ended up in West Virginia, and here we are. And so,
I didn't know that.
So I look at U.S. history, and what I see is a system that was always leading up to this point. They started off ambiguous. They sold it in a really good way, and just the advancement of technology, the extraction of wealth, everything concentrating down the way it is. I think we're at the end point we were always going to be at with this framework, right? To me, I mean, you base the entire system off of European parliamentary procedures, right? And the foundation of our legal system is So for example, I always like to say this: in 2005, Ruth Bader Ginsburg authored a majority finding on a case against indigenous land rights. And in it, they cite a 15th century papal bull about the doctrine of discovery, about how indigenous peoples can't own any land. They can't stake any claim to it because they're not Christian people. So the fact that we are going that far back before the country even existed to stake our legal claims, that means people like me and my grandmother, the people out in Arizona, they have no legal recourse under this system whatsoever. We have an unequitable system. It's got to be fundamentally reshaped. So when people are looking at this as the constitutional crisis, that maybe it is, because it is a crisis either way, is my point. But maybe it's always been a crisis, right? Maybe we're just now seeing this in the modern day. Now we're past that point where we've told ourselves things have been progressing. We've been making advancements, suffrage, civil rights. The list goes on and on. We were told these things were won. I know whenever I grew up and I was taught in school, we are at the point now where we have reached this pinnacle of civilization. And we realize now that that's not true at all. And so we got to re-examine what really is the root cause of this. And I think that now we can accept the fact that oligarchy is the end result of the American way. I mean, it was set up for landowning white men. And now that's been consolidated to the point where it's just billionaire white men that want to control the government. And we've got to put a stop to it at some point. And we're going to have to do it outside of electoral politics. I mean, I know you don't want to hand things over. You've got to stay involved to a certain degree. But I think that most people would be benefited if we could turn our apathy, the people who have disengaged, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go support this candidate, let's focus on forcing those who do win to do what's right. And I think that if we could get a movement going for accountability or for pushing for like modernizing the Constitution, then we could start seeing people re-engaging civically, but not in a way that they feel like their voice isn't heard. Electoral politics, people get involved and then they think, what's the point? I get somebody elected, they no longer listen to me, they're beholden to the donors. Well, let's get a mechanism in place, or at least get people engaged with trying to hold people accountable. And, everything that we've ever won rights wise was done by threatening power. Nothing's ever been gifted to us. So we've got to figure out how to do that in the modern sense. And, God bless everybody out there that's inspired by Luigi Mangione. But if we go that route, it's going to be chaos in the streets. We've got to try to come together in a way where we can make advancements without completely falling apart. And, identifying people who are wrong and holding them accountable is the way. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but we're in a dangerous place where the risk of violence to wide swaths of the American people, it's not unrealistic to envision a scenario in the near future where that's a major concern for all of us, right? And so how do we avoid that? How do we come back from the precipice where we are now? Trump has started the process, but he's not fully taken complete power. Nobody's lining up to get behind him. I don't know that the military's with him should things go that direction. So there's still time for people to fight and come together, but our window is shrinking, and the threat isn't over once Trump is gone. Like I said, the system is designed to put us here. There's another Trump ready to go, and the Democrats haven't shown any efficacy at fighting back. They've not taken the conversation and switched it. They're scared. I mean, and I understand that, but we're going to need some bold leadership, and it's not going to come from those people.
So you don't think that Chuck Schumer's Sturm talking to yesterday or the day before was going to rally the troops and get them to stop fighting against each other and start forming the ranks against Trumpism on the left?
Maybe.
I thought he was just missing a Reuben sandwich. It sounded like something you get down in New York City at the deli.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not completely opposed, as you know.
I know.
Like I've said, my goal is to force people to do the right thing. I don't care if it's Chuck Schumer or the next guy, if they do what needs to be done in the moment, right? So my goal is to pressure these people who are in power to do what's needed to be done. And I think that should be, I think that's a good goal for all of us, right? So engaging politically means more than just accepting what you're given, voting for who you're offered. We've got to look at this through, think outside of the box. The system is the box. When you're inside of it, you're trapped. There's no recourse for any of us within. The framework isn't set up for that. The laws, the interpretations, none of it is set up for us. So we've got to come at the box. And the only way to do that is from outside of it, right? So in that analogy, what is it that we can do to pressure people? And I have a real plan for how we could enact some serious reforms outside of the traditional electoral politics by forcing people to do it. But it would be a serious process and not something that would be wise to put out to everybody until you have people in place ready to enact it. I mean, you would need a team of lawyers across at least 20 plus states ready to do this. I mean, you're talking, you would have to mobilize millions of people for this. But
so again, you still think that there's a but wouldn't that be working with inside the box if we're going with the lawyers? We're still working within that
unless
label.
You're going to, you're not working with the politicians inside. It would be a mass movement to enact things through ballot measures, and you would have to do many of them to get to the point where you could force any kind of conversation about amending the Constitution on a large scale like that. So for my research, you'd be looking at 10 years or better before you could get to the point where there would be enough states that have because the states themselves would have to enact laws that would allow for citizens to call for a challenge, the state to issue a challenge or stand with a challenge to the Constitution.
So
you'd have to do that across the country and have everybody on board. It would be a broad, coordinated effort that would require massive mobilization.
But what you're looking at, if we're going to make it easy for the audience to understand, is that a referendum-based system, right? So that, like California has, they say, okay, law, you get 2,000 signatures in some county, and you can say, no, I don't like that county law anymore, and we're going to do that, and have recalls and all kinds of stuff like that.
Right.
Right.
And
That's
like I said, mine is just I'm not getting the specifics exactly right because I'm not a constitutional
Well, I
lawyer
know,
or
but I'm just
anything.
saying, but that's the basic
but that's the
idea.
plan, right? Is to force there to be these laws and mechanisms for people to make these calls themselves rather than relying on elected
But we
officials
saw,
to do so.
but I think we saw how well that was spectacularly turned against California lately. So they had the AB, what was it? AB 5 originally was the law that was that focused on separating out workers from being part-time and full-time, and how it affected the gig workers there. And they went through a couple of renditions of it, and finally they got it pretty much overturned because they spent $180 million, and they got AB 227 or something like that. And that was like, oh, okay, so now your gig workers are back in the gig. They don't get overtime. They get this and that. So, I mean, that I like referendums and everything, but it seems that when we're dealing with this much institutional inequality of power between the ultra wealthy and us, it doesn't seem like referendums are enough to really stop a true effort on their part of a takeover.
Right. No. So this is the thing. This is why I wouldn't go too into detail beyond your legal team if you're getting this movement together, because it would require.
But aren't they going to kind of notice? It would require. They would kind of notice, like, because you're going to be like shooting all these lawsuits off like one afternoon. Like 50 states just start suing the government.
Well, but that's honestly that's the goal, is to force some sort of action, right? So I again don't want to get too detailed because my research is so basic right now.
Okay.
I just but and again, you would also have to get people on board. I don't know that I'm the organizer for this. So if anybody wants to take over, like, start looking at it this way. But the goal would be to have, okay, so let's say the mechanism to, what is it, Article 5, right? To in the Constitution. So instead of having we would want to find a way to get these different states together to call for that to happen, but not necessarily have the people within the state on board. We'd want the people of the state to be able to force their state into that action.
Yeah, but
so that's the goal, is to find ways and to enact laws at local levels to bring power back to the people in some capacity and force that action at lower levels, state level action, until we get those mechanisms in place to then take it up to the federal level. So this would be, like I said, a long process, one that I'm just laying out very broadly, that would require a lot of moving parts. But ultimately, when you're talking about the collapse, I mean, legitimately, we're at the point now where we have to think about the slow decline and possible collapse of the United States as an institution, as a state, and what that looks like, what comes after. And so I think that once, again, you're not going to get people in a normal situation to say, this is a great idea, let's go and make these massive changes. It's going to come, though. And so I think the groundwork needs to be here, and we need to start trying to do what we can to get these triggers in place, to get people the ability to fight back in any capacity. I think that we will see that it's going to take a little bit longer than Trump would like to fully gain institutional control of everything, right? And so I don't know what this looks like. If you're most of me is pessimistic. This is me saying, what is the only way we could avoid the worst case scenarios of fracturing as a country, devolving into civil war? You take your pick.
That's the libertarian fantasy on some levels, right? The so-called national divorce.
Is that not what they're going? I don't know. Is that what they're going for here?
Some are talking about it seriously. I mean, I talked to Mike Termat about it, and he was, he had a kind of a quasi answer that was sort of well yes and well no, right? I mean, because they're all hawks on defense libertarians, amazingly, but they don't want to pay for anything or have any like government telling them like, you know, you can't dump X in river B because it flows down to person C. But when you get down to it, they really do kind of want the government to be a nothingness, right? I mean that only does like defense and maybe a few treaties out in the world, and then everything else is kind of chaos on the inside. And if you have a better lawyer or a better this, because they're always into contract law to justify pretty much everything, then you're fine. So you could sell me your liver, right? As long as we made the contract within that contractually legal.
Right. And that's the point, right? So I think that what I'm saying here, we need experts. You need a lot of people looking at this to see the actual mechanisms. But the goal would be across the country to have tens of millions of people on board with the idea of restructuring our institutions to reflect the mythology that we've built, the American dream, the real one. Every little thing that people love to say, freedom, just liberty and justice for all men are created equal. Like actually make that.
But here's the thing, that's what I'm getting at, is that you got a large portion of this population now that really doesn't believe deep down that everyone's created equal anymore, or everyone needs to have the dream, right? I mean, that's what they voted for. I mean, they voted to put people who they think are not right out of the country not this.
See, but this is where political leaders have to take charge. When issues are framed neutrally in polls, let's take trans rights, because honestly, that's one of the biggest issues for conservatives out there to marginalize and to target, that and immigration right now, and women's rights. Cars. I mean, listen, you can't actually pick one thing, but let's just pick one thing for an example.
But don't forget the electric cars. They're very pissed that somebody might tell them that an electric car.
No, so
is the future,
right? But it's just to the point now where they implement these laws. I forget where I was headed with this, but we've got to stand up. We got to have leadership. I think that's where I was. We've got to have leadership on these issues because they are important issues, and we've got to find a way to navigate the bigotry over there. I've totally lost track of where I was at, but that's the issue here. And so when people, I got it. I'm back. When you talk about people by and large aren't supportive or they are hateful, not necessarily. A lot of that is stoked and it's framed in a way that gets them riled up. When you treated it neutrally, a lot of people will say, well, no, I do support that, because it's the radical framing that gets people radicalized. It's that entry point. There are always people pushing the limits. That's why bathrooms started it. Mm-hmm. That's why sports has been wildly successful, because people, they can't get past sports and their belief that men are in a lot of ways stronger than women physically. They have different physiques and all of this. But at the end of the day, sports can decide. This is my as somebody, I have trans family members, I'm completely supportive, of course. I mean, ultimately, sports are sports. What sports, their little boards, their little commissions, whatever they decide. Okay, listen, I'm not going to fight those individual boards for whatever they decide. But structurally, the state can't step in and start legislating identity that way. We have to protect that. And the sports have a unique place in our culture, so you do have to carve out some sort of understanding there. And not all sports groups would be created equal. When you do a blanket ban, you have no options, right? When you allow each commission to decide, well, then each sport is going to have more favorable commissions, less favorable commissions. And the goal would be to allow them to not let the state step in. We've got to do everything in our power to make sure that state authority doesn't come into this picture and start oppressing people. And again, somebody who doesn't watch sports, enjoy sports in any capacity, this is the wildest thing that we even have to discuss this. But if you're going to talk about, well, we've got to make concessions, the only concession you can make is keep the government out of it. The government has no place defining such things or implementing rules, blanketly banning people, a group of people. That's a dangerous, really dangerous step to take, and it's happening across the board. Like I said, you've got every.
But isn't that what the point of Title
group.
IX is actually before Trump got a hold of Title IX and screwed it up completely? Was that it was supposed to make government the arbitrator that said that, guess what, everyone's equal,
right?
And
right.
they all have to have a shot. I mean, because I think that was important, right? But because if we take the government out, right, that says, oh no. You don't have to have it equal, right? And we let it go to these little towns, then, or boards, right? They're really easy to manipulate with enough money, right? You can get enough.
Right. Well, and again, to me, this is a stopgap measure because sports have such a cultural hold. I don't have the answers for it.
Personally, I don't like sports either, so
I don't like sports, and to me,
so when I see that woman Riley Grimes on like, I think what was it? You're just upset that you didn't get into the Olympics? You weren't good enough for that? You think some man took your spot or something? I have no clue.
I just so like for just sports. I don't understand sports fully. There's like, I'm just being honest. So for every institution, yeah, you can't. But this again goes across. You're right. I don't know how this works because I guess I don't really fully understand sports. But the issue is that the state can't be oppressing any individual group based upon
right. So
identity.
so the state.
So we have.
If we're going to have the state, it's going to be an arbitrator of equality.
Right.
Not it can't say what your identity is. It has.
Well, and I guess the issue to me would be that we can't. I would say that you have to have strong protections in place. The reforms that you want to see, strong protections in place that make it clear that gender identity is a protected status, that we are supportive of this group fully. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for state schools, yeah, I guess that means that you wouldn't be allowed. I'm not for state schools. I guess I'm talking professional sports. I don't know, like the Olympics and whatever they want to do. Like what we do as the government can't be discriminatory, though. That's my point. Independent. Like if you start a softball team, and you really want to be exclusive, you're excluding people. Look, it's bad. I'm not.
Well, supposedly, according to Title IX, yeah, you could have that exclusive thing. Just don't ask for any money from the government because you can't.
So I may not have stated that clearly before. Anything government related, you have to have strong protections in place. We must make that the standard. And so, but allow the space in these other, whatever it is. I think that as you start seeing these things protected, though, the level of bigotry should die down if you don't allow people to make these laws. If we codify into law that this is the way of the land and we enforce it strictly, I don't think that it's going to become such a wide issue because, again, it's not really an issue. It's just the way they go to pick people off and say there is a reasonable amount of transphobia. So
I don't know. I think that there's a lot more transphobia now than we had even 10 years ago.
There's a lot more. But like I said, 10 years ago, that's when they started with the bathroom bans.
Right.
That's when they really started going in on these people. And they used these very niche, very specific instances, bathrooms and sports, to say, we've got to do something about trans people. And so, yeah, I mean,
I've always wondered though what they really think about the bathroom. Like, if you're really going to be the bathroom rapist, right? I don't think the little sign that puts the little skirt on one and the little pants on the other is going to be like the whoa.
Well, I
was going to rape you, but you know what? I saw that. I know you went into you went into the magic room, and now I can't go. It's like a barrier.
Well, right, and also it's public. I mean, I just don't think it provides any level of safety if you're saying it doesn't. So the logic of it isn't there, as you're saying. There's absolutely zero logic to it because the sign doesn't stop somebody that has that intention. It just doesn't. Right. And so the illegal part is going to be not using the wrong bathroom. I mean, at that point, you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
Again, it's just the way in. So I don't know. I guess you're right. My take on the sports topic wasn't thought out really because Yeah, I don't think about the state schools and the state sports whenever I'm talking about this. To me, it's professional sports, and
Well, even so,
you know,
professional sports, they shouldn't be discriminatory either, right? I mean,
I
shouldn't
I
we
don't even
fight
like
that?
I don't even like
I
sports.
don't
I don't
either.
know.
But I mean, but I think it's a pretty. I think it was a pretty terrible world before Jackie Robinson got into
Well,
baseball.
I guess the issue that I have is that the fight is so much bigger than sports too, and the humanization, like treating people as human, shouldn't be reliant upon such a niche topic, but it's that wedge issue that gets in there into this topic. And so like I want to kind of, let's not even talk about sports, I guess. But
But it doesn't
I
matter
don't
what
have the
sport.
answers because you do have to have the strong protections. There's no debate on that. The state at least must absolutely protect this every group of people. You can't allow for any marginalization.
And that's
And
what
what they've
exactly
done
what
is
we have right now.
institutionalize it. Right. They're making laws targeting these people. And so that's got to stop. And so maybe my language is just thinking we're going to trick Republicans by saying, let them decide. And then really hitting them with protections for trans people without them
I don't
expecting
know.
anything.
I mean,
I don't know.
think
I don't know the answer, but and you know what? You're honestly making, like, so you know me, I'm actually really pessimistic about where we are right now. And you're kind of making my case that we're on a collision course with disaster.
Well, we
There
are. I
is
mean,
a
there's no doubt
lot
about
of
that.
hate and bigotry in this country. And at the end of the day, there's no room for people like that in the future. It's a relic of the past. And if we're going to move on, we've got to do everything we can to eliminate that school of thought. And sometimes you have to do it forcefully. Integration in the South didn't happen.
No.
They did it at the end of a gun. So,
well, I mean, did it really ever integrate completely?
Well, oh God, no. But I'm saying that even what they did do,
yeah, I know.
They had to force it. They had to send in and enforce that, which did, at the very least, do what they said they wanted to do in terms of forcing some of these all-white institutions to take on Black students and all of that. So again, was it perfect?
I mean, because
Absolutely not,
let's be honest. One of the reasons why we're sitting in this non-Roe versus Wade society is because Bob Jones University kept on getting sued for not letting Black people in, and they wanted to get rid of that. That whole entire 1964 Civil Rights Act, and now we're sitting here with but they couldn't sell it, right? I mean, like you said, you couldn't sell it, right? If you wanted to say, oh, Bob Jones, hi, I'm Bob Jones University. I'd like to be the most racist university in America. Would you like to come to our school, right? And would you like to vote for our politicians? Doesn't really sell too well, right? Because nobody wants to say that, hey, I'm voting for the racist in 1970.
Right.
They all want to say that that's beyond, that's in our past, right? But they want to have they want to know it's still there, right? That the world hasn't changed.
It's never gone away. It's never gone away. At the end of the day, though, the best we can hope for until, I mean, okay, so let's say there's a utopic society. We get everything just right, and just naturally all the hate dies away. Great, fantastic. Till then, I think the best we can hope for is to just make it shameful. We've got to take the narrative back. But
we did make it shameful. Right? I mean, we did between 1970 and now, right? It was, and we codified it, right? I mean, Lee Atwater famously says, you say, the N-word in 1959 and you're winning. By 1960, it's hurting you. So in 1970, it's busing. In 1980s, it's really about, it's about economic demographic groups, right? And you say things like, we don't want to see people get hurt by relying on welfare. And really what we're talking about is we just don't want to support poor people, and everyone gets it, but you feel good about yourself because you're not doing it. And then, you get Trump, and Trump just says, well, I want to go back to 1959.
Right.
Because it's a hell of a lot easier. My vocabulary sucks.
Well, no, but that's why you have to have the real structural change to go along with it.
But what I'm getting at is, maybe the structural change has to be smaller, right? Maybe you don't make the big structural change at first, because when you do that, right, at the federal level, these people go underground, seethe, right? Maybe you have to do it at like the local level first.
Oh, look, I mean, look, I'm not going to say I don't think there's a right time. I think
No,
that
there's
if
no
we
right
could, I
time.
mean, I think if we could force it, if we could get the power to enforce it, like, so that's the problem to me, is that there's no political power for this right now. If we could get the power, make the laws and enforce it, that's to me the way to go. Hell with the chaos that ensues. If there's bigotry, you put it down after the fact. If you get the power, you take the power. So that's my goal. My goal is to get the power to be able to do that. Where we are right now, we're not there. You're not wrong. So what maybe the best, most effective way, you're right, is to do it locally. But I'm going to say, if we could do
Oh,
it
sure.
nationally, I would do it in a heartbeat with force. I want
Of
people. I
course.
mean, at the end of the day,
I mean,
we have got to stop being, reluctant to say the truth of the matter, because these forces are converging. We have to be able to make a real stand, whatever that means, to whatever individual is out there. It's life or death at a certain point. And, I'm for reconstitution. I'm for trying to fix this. But, you take a realist view of the world right now. It's dangerous. It's scary. And I don't know. It's a really unique situation, I think, given the confluence of technology, networking ability, the instant access to information. Nothing like this has ever happened when we've had this level of technology. We're in uncharted territory, and each of us may be able to actually make a difference. I'm not saying we can't. The goal, though, is to work to make that happen, right? So all of these, I don't know the specifics necessarily, but I do know that I hope people start thinking about radical change and stop looking to leaders who aren't working for us to be the change that we need.
I think
I just hope that people start feeling empowered to act. Not in some violent way, by the way. What I just said next to that, I'm talking about civically engaging right now, because we're not into any level where you should be thinking about anything other than how can we fight back, showing political force by that grassroots mobilization. Can we find a way to bring disenfranchised voters who feel left behind by all of the electeds together to tell those electeds, just because we didn't vote for you doesn't mean you don't work for us, right? Because that's something they've got to get out of their heads too. I only work for the people who vote for me. No, you don't.
Well, I think it's exact opposite. Like, so we're seeing in New York, right? We had a long shot candidate in the 19th. That's the district I'm in the House of Representatives. It's mostly a farming district. It's mostly rural, which usually trends heavily towards Republicans. And we had Mike Molinaro versus Josh Riley. And Josh ran what I would call mid-90s Republican candidate campaign. It was, I'm going to bring the jobs back somehow. Don't really ask me how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take out the I'm going to work with the other Congress members. We're going to have a border security. Borders. I mean, we couldn't be further from the damn border if you tried. I mean, the only border we're near is Canada.
Right.
That's our border.
Right.
Right. I mean, so, but we have a higher, we have a level of Mexican immigration in here, and Guatemalan and Ecuadorian and Venezuelan and all that. But that's just naturally because they're taking jobs that, migrant workers that farmers rely on. I mean, these are literally the workforce that they're trying to get rid of. I don't understand it. But he's deathly afraid not to vote for the Lakin-Riley Act because those people push that. And so what did he do? He wrote it. He put the little yes. Now you go to the next district, right, which borders him, which is the 18th. And that's Orange County, Dutchess County, a little, mostly Dutchess, and a little sliver of Ulster County, like Kingston, right, which first capital of New York State, for all those that were wondering. George Washington was there for a while. That has a much higher level of Mexican and immigrant populations. That guy, who's Pat Ryan, another, this is not a guy you call progressive, even though Ryan Grimm did call him a progressive once on the Hill. This is the kind of guy that worked for Plantar, worked for Burco Industries, worked for Data Miner. This guy loves to spy on people. I mean, that's his job. He's literally, this is how he's made his millions. And don't let him tell you he hasn't made millions, because he has. I mean, the last paycheck that he got from Data Miner was in the 352,000 minus what his stock options were as vice president down in New York City. So he's made a ton of money on monitoring Facebook and everything else, looking for BML riots for the FBI. He votes no. But it's because, you know what, the people that are going to vote him out are going to be, they're more liberal, right? They're people that aren't sitting there saying that you have this major immigrant problem. Now, I work in Wyndham with this little group called the Mountaintop Progressives, and they're all, they say they're progressive. That's debatable. So they're all in an uproar about this, right? And their big thing is they want to hand out flyers to these immigrants and tell them that, if ICE comes to your door, you don't have to open it and you don't have to do this. And that's true. ICE, you don't have to open it until they get the warrant. But when I suggested that, hey, well, maybe we should set up some mutual aid programs, right? Because if these people are hiding out in their houses, they're not going to be able to go to the grocery store where they're going to get picked up. And they're not going to be, and you're going to have to drive them to the doctors, because guess what? If they see their car move, they're going to know, they're going to tail it and follow it.
Right.
So we're going to have to set up an underground railroad station. Crickets, absolute crickets to that idea. Absolute crickets, right? I mean, so that's my problem, is that I think that too many progressives want to do the easy thing, or, like hand out the paperwork and say, okay.
You put all of the focus of, okay, so think about this. Listen, working with white, and because, primarily, I am definitely biracial and definitely passing, but I'm going to say this, it's the perspective, right? So when you're in these spaces dominated by white leftists or white progressives, they have this paternalistic view that is just permeated throughout. So even the progressives, they don't think about it this way. But they're saying, okay, they're already targets of state violence. I'm not going to put the state violence on me. I'm going to give them a list of instructions that I, a white person, know about, that they probably don't know about. And I'm going to save them with information. And
well,
then they wipe their hands of
it doesn't hurt.
It's intellectual. I mean, it doesn't hurt. But the point is that they don't ever want to get that. You don't want to. They don't take on the same risk. There's no risk. They don't want to take on that same level of risk that everyone else inherently has that's living this. And so, to me, if you're going to be concerned, at this point, you have no option but to put your life on the line for what we believe in, because it's coming for us. This is not this is no longer a test. We're past the point where you can say, "Oh, it's hypothetical. It's not that bad. Oh, we'll survive. We've survived everything else." They're coming. They have a plan. They're enacting it, and it's up to us to be that line of resistance. If that means hiding out your immigrant friend, you hide them out. If it means taking them food, you take them food. If you got to take them to appointments, take them to appointments. Do what you can to stop this fascist takeover and normalization of weaponizing these institutions against marginalized people. We've got to put a stop to it through people power. Moral resistance is not, I mean, it is illegal, but it's moral. You've got to do it. And will it make a lot of us criminals? Probably. Am I saying this? Yeah, I am. Because it's necessary. And when the dust settles, hopefully we've stayed whole. Hopefully we've beat Trump and we've restructured things to a more equitable system. I'll be 70, 80 years old, maybe,
I don't think it'll take that long.
But that
usually what happens, when these things happen, the change is pretty rapid, the swing back.
That's true. That's very true. But again,
because he's ready to start World War III anyway, so we're screwed.
Well, that's the point. And you know what? If they start World War III, there's a good chance we're on the opposite. I don't know.
We're on the wrong side of it.
We're on the wrong side, I think. We're not in a good place. And again, I'm somebody who I have always, whenever I'm criticizing systems, right? The global North-South divide, to me, shows how a lot of these, whatever governance, okay, so like ideologically in the 20th century, it was communism versus capitalism. Both systems
Mhm.
waged imperial wars and
Sure.
exploited the global south for their own territory's needs, right?
Yeah.
So there's this when we're talking about World War III, which apparently we are, to me it's like,
Well, I just
okay,
mean he wants to invade Canada. That has to start the Article 5 in NATO. I mean,
right, well, okay,
he's,
well,
he's pretty
okay, now that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
he's
But
pretty
just
much said it,
ideologically,
right?
right? But
Their
and that's the
51st
other
state
thing.
could have annexed them. I'm like, well,
Where we're at though is totally, like I said, uncharted. I don't even know. You don't know. None of us know what's really going to be possible versus what's just hyperbolic nonsense coming out of these
well,
people's mouths.
well, what I think he's trying to do though is that look what he's doing to Europe, right? He's attacking Europe, right? He's forcing them into a bubble to break NATO. It looks like to me,
Yeah.
right? So if NATO falls, right, does Canada stay? Or does he take that opportunity when NATO's in flux to like invade and say, "Look, you can't use Article 5 because NATO didn't exist anymore"?
I mean, at what point will I get arrested? This is a hypothetical. Will I get arrested if I say that military leaders at that point should resist an illegal order? Right? Like I hate. I'm not somebody who's a big military guy, but at the same time, they also have a code. Like,
Yeah, they do.
Don't they have a duty to refuse those kind of orders if they come down?
Well, look at it. I mean, is he going to pick the border issue? I mean, there's always been an issue about the 54th parallel, right?
Right.
Is Vancouver really ours? Is he going to push that? I mean, if he wants to go even more absurd, does he want to say that, the reason why Canadians have a black population is they were runaway slaves, and at the time of 1850, they were property of America. We've never been properly compensated for this, and then put like some huge amount of money. I mean, if one of those geniuses finally figures this one out, this is the one he'll love the best because, he can put the price at like, $40 trillion and say that they owe it to us or we invade.
And this goes to the point also of the way in which procedural rules, interpretations of laws are skewed to benefit the people in power. I mean, we're talking about hypotheticals, but if they were to take it to court and make these arguments, I don't know.
Well, I mean, in international court, he's not going to win, but in an American court,
right? Well, that of course, but it's that American court and our institutional power that he's weaponizing the world over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our institutions being susceptible to a strong man like Trump is a problem for the world. And again, this is how we this is how we created our laws and our entire system. There was so much faith in decorum and doing things the way that they were intended to be done.
Well,
you write laws with ambiguity so that people can interpret them where they are and administer them in the way that works best. You have there's a little ambiguity, and that's how he ended up in court battles and all of these things, right? But that's intentional at the start of it. I mean, like I'm pretty sure that when they wrote the Constitution, it was the same type of situation, right?
Well, they
and we've
literally
been
wrote the
battling
Constitution, the amendment system to fix things, right? I mean, we have
Right,
they designed a procedure to fix it, right? Our problem is that
right. That's a lot of barriers to amend it.
But our problem is that, well, then it would be kind of pointless, right? If you could do it so easily, right?
I think they should. I honestly think they should have made it to where you have to update it, every few.
Well, that would have made more sense. But what I was getting at is that with him, right, we don't have the checks and balances because the checks just don't want to do anything, right? I mean, they're afraid that Elon Musk is going to, run somebody in their district and give them like $40 million on the first day, and they'll have such a commanding lead in the money because we've made money such an important part of the electoral process that none of these guys can ever fight and win.
But I mean, to me, that's realistic. But that doesn't excuse being weak.
No,
that's
it doesn't.
The point. The fear is what's keeping all of these people here in West Virginia. They have Patrick Morrissey, the governor.
I mean, they're literally not doing their job, what they're hired to do.
Well, and they they try to appease these people in hopes that they can either work with them and get something that they want done and look good, or that people will see that they're not they're not an ideological person, they're bipartisan, this, that, or whatever it is. Like here in West Virginia, like I was going to say, they have people, Democrats, standing and clapping for the governor saying we're going to ban trans athletes in sports because they want to look like I'm with you on that point. Like they're willing to sacrifice serious policy points that affect a lot of people for some sort of perceived power, right? For some sort of perceived gain, but it's not actualized. There's never going to be a point when they win an election based upon being weak and parroting right-wing talking points. All you're doing is legitimizing that position. And it's like there's no strategy beyond the very immediate, like they're reactionary in their political strategy. They're reactionary in a lot of ways, but specifically fighting these people, they don't seem to have an idea of how to move forward. And I don't know if that's fear of losing donors, fear of being attacked by the outside, just all of it kind of coming together. But they kind of are like deer in the headlights right now. They're just, what are we going to do to keep our jobs, to keep things going as smoothly as they were? Because they had a pretty sweet gig, Democrats, for a really long time. They had they really did. They were the opposition party. They got to look really morally superior. They didn't have to fight back too much. They got a ton of money into their coffers. They lived their best lives, right? And now that's all coming
winning
back
in
to bite
2020
them.
was one of the worst things that happened to them.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, I said that this was done from the top down. Like everything that's happened to me in West Virginia has been because of interference from the DNC. If the rules were interpreted right, if people were, not having fingers on the scale, we wouldn't be in a situation we're in. That's the same everywhere. That's what they did in all the states when Bernie ran in 2016. They exerted their force to make sure he lost. They did the same in 2020. The 2020 shenanigans were out. You can't. I don't know if people don't remember, but it was during COVID. And those final few weeks of the primary, I've never seen the media be so blatantly attacking a candidate as Bernie Sanders had the brown shirts. Bernie Sanders was this. And they went as hard as they could.
I mean, there's some bizarre things earlier on when, somehow Biden converts all of Massachusetts almost to him.
And
a vote-wise,
that right.
I mean, you've done voting and polls, right? I mean, if you got 15%, right, that might be.
Oh, you mean polling versus the turnout? No, I mean, if the polling is accurate, you don't expect more than if there's an anomaly, I think it's more than you got your standard, but if you're getting it like 5%, 3 to 5, up there like 5%, you've got a problem because that's. I mean, do you know how much? Just so people know, do you know how much just a poll costs for it's like $40,000 to $70,000 for one poll. It's not cheap because it's done so precisely. You take everything that you can into consideration.
Well, what I was talking about is that they had all these polls leading up to the primaries, right? Where Bernie was leading by quite a margin, and then everyone drops out right at the bottom. Now you figure, say it's a 15% gap, right? You figure that 5% of those have probably voted early, right? So those votes are stuck. But you're starting to see that after poll after poll, after election, Biden's getting like 98% turnover, right? I mean, he's taking conversion factors. I mean, that just doesn't happen. You just don't get that high of a conversion that late in the race.
Well, I mean, but Liz, look,
I've always wondered.
I don't know how it works because that's election stuff. So I don't know how they would do anything. Now, caucuses and stuff where they certify it in-house, that's, we saw the shenanigans that night because that's what they will do. Or whenever Nevada, they shut it down and people were walking out while there were still people.
But he still won Nevada by a handsome amount.
I think this am I thinking of 2016?
It was
they
Iowa,
walked out or
Nevada 2016 is when he had a problem when they shut the lights off and everything.
Shut the lights off. Yeah. Okay, I'm with it.
But in 2020, he won, and that was when what's his name made his famous Paris is Falling comparison.
Right.
But I was just saying, it's just very odd that you get all of these repeated, right? That it's really hard to convert people once they're that far into the game, right? They've pretty much stuck. If they, they might be a little flexible, but if you drop out, but you got the early voters. We had early voting that year. We started early voting in that primary. Was one of the first times.
Primary, right?
Yeah. So I mean, some of this should have been locked in. It should have been a lot closer. Then we start seeing these returns. And then Bernie just kind of gave up. I mean, halfway through.
The last podcast I did for my show, As the World Burns, was about Bernie dropping out and my sheer disappointment with the tone of the campaign, with the way that it ended. And I felt like it was defeatist, and it was like a really dark moment.
It was.
And it turned out to be. And actually, I feel vindicated. I wish I still had that out. I closed down everything and I lost all the old files. I would love to pull that out and see what I said, because at the time it was just so wild to me. He's using all of this language about Biden being his friend and we're going to work together to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, you had this moment, this opportunity. Like, he brought so many people from so many different walks of life together. Like, I have all of these Bernie people that I added on my social media, and now I'm seeing them slowly start going away to all these different right-wing, people and influencers. And I'm like, we had a moment when all of these people were on board with seriously progressive politics, and we've lost them. And I'm going to say it. That's in part because of Bernie's belief in the system. This system is broken, people. It's not, even if we get things back to the way they were, and we got 1 million Bernies, the foundation is cracked. It's not going to be able to be fixed without massive structural. I think about this, Connor. Think about, what was it, the 1950s? They got the foundation of the White House was crumbling, right?
Yeah.
They had to completely gut it, fix the foundation, then build it back. And you know what? It looks like this. It's kind of the same White House, right? It's kind of the same idea. It's going to be the same thing if we can restructure and modernize the American system. It's the same thing. We'll have the same thing, except it'll be actually better and stronger. And maybe
I don't know if we want the same thing. I don't know that we want the same things.
So that it looks like, at least that we're all together still, right? Like, I like that. I don't know how I feel. If we're going to break it up, okay, let's talk about that. But if we're not, then the idea of staying a United States of America.
I'm talking about that. I think is important, but I think that we can break up a lot of the other stuff. I mean,
I think you got to have I'm for decentralization in every way possible. I know a lot of people will say they might call me an anarchist. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think that having too much state power kind of it results in the same kind of oppression or suppression of the people that massive amounts of wealth and power in the hands of a few oligarchs results in. We've got to balance this and get power back into the hands of the people. So I don't know. I don't like labels whatsoever. So anarchy, whatever you want to call it. But we do have to focus on letting people thrive where they are in the conditions that they have around them. Everybody's material conditions and needs are different. And we have to be able to meet people where they are. Here in West Virginia, we might need more snowplows than they need in Florida. In Florida, they're going to need more of this than the other thing. We can't, there's not a blanket one size fits all for everybody. And we have to be flexible enough for all of us to be able to meet our needs. And
I think there's some things that are pretty uniform. I mean, clean water is pretty uniform. I mean,
no, definitely. So my idea is that you have foundational, that real mythos of America. You have foundational rules that you just don't break. Clean water, clean air. Those are, that's like a new Bill of Rights that we would want to have. Is something that everything that is universal, we make that the law of the land, and then how that's implemented. So here in West Virginia, maybe we might have different approach to clean water and what we need to focus on than someone else, right? Because we've got coal mines, mercury, heavy metals.
You're never going to need a different type of approach because they keep on,
but the goal
polluting.
Is the same. Yeah. Right. I agree with that.
Well, that's good. I mean, we can work with that. What I was just going to say is that my big issue, though, with Trump is that we've seen a breakdown of even his political power in some respects. I mean, you've never seen a president have a meeting with his highest non-elected official at the same time, and he's doing Oval Office after Oval Office with Musk.
That's really weird, isn't it? I mean, that's really weird. It's Trump as somebody who has been so egomaniacal in his approach to everything in life. He's the biggest, baddest, smartest, toughest guy in the room everywhere he goes. He's got to be. That's his thing. But then he's got Musk literally standing over him, arms crossed, looking down at him.
And he's got the little kid telling him to shut up.
It's
I want to teach that kid some new phrases, though. Like, just some very rude ones.
I'm sure he can't not hear rude things coming out of their mouths. But I mean, honestly, I do think there is something to be said for, even though they do have this plan, even though they are enacting this plan, the people who are doing it, they're not the architects necessarily. We know who the architects are. These right-wing think tanks have been planning this for a very long time. And they just got a really good candidate in Donald Trump to manipulate into doing it all. Luckily, though, and maybe I'm wrong, this is too much optimism, but it doesn't seem that they're as well equipped as they could be to go about enacting all of this.
Well,
I think they could have gotten a better administrator than Donald Trump and Elon Musk, is my point. So maybe there's a little bit of opportunity.
They've got a hard thing to do, right? I mean, how do you create chaos and yet still look like you're governing? Right. I mean, and that's really what they want to do. They want to create all this governmental chaos so that they can then say, well, we need to have these private corporations come in and fix it. But you got a guy from private corporations making all the chaos deliberately. I mean, it's not like he's not.
So I think their goal is to try to make the chaos as one-sided as possible. Then they get the best of both worlds. The people they hurt aren't necessarily their base. They get to show that there's a need for their power grabs and for their authoritarian moves. So that's why it's also really dangerous for everybody who opposes Trump. Marginalized people, of course, chopping block. They are, every single marginalized group right now is being targeted in some way. You can't pick and choose, right? But even the Trump voters who are white, cis, heterosexuals, they're on the chopping block too, and that's going to be seen
it's everyone who's
eventually. So at first, it's going to look like it's just the left. They're getting all the corruption out of. So we're not sending any more money to Ukraine or whatever it is, right? But as they keep going, even these people are going to start saying, "Wait a second." And so we've got to be ready not to capitalize on the pain, not to look for the pain, but when there is that pain, we don't need to laugh at them. We need to be there to provide material support and tell them this. You know why this actually happened? It's because those guys don't care about you. We can't keep doing this. We've got to, when we can, de-radicalize folks and bring them into the fold, not center them. You don't center those people, but you don't let them necessarily die either if they're willing to make the changes they need to make in their lives. That's my point. The people who are lost forever, forget them. I mean, that's fair. But we have to work really hard to try to build a coalition that's not. The division right now is fake. It's created by all of this fake rhetoric. Democrats claiming to be superior for racial justice and all of these things when they don't do anything. It's paternalistic, performative action, if anything. You got Republicans who are openly bigoted and hateful. There's an opportunity here for somebody real. Okay, let me just point this out. In West Virginia, 2024, Mary Ann Claytor got more votes than Kamala Harris, got more votes than any other Democrat on the ticket. She was, except for the governor, but the governor's race had more votes, statistically tied with that race. Here's the kicker. She spent 10 times less money than him, and he was the mayor of one of the biggest cities in the state. He's got a reputation. When you're real, when you're saying things that people can understand, that you're not bullshitting them because you want something for yourself, you can win people over. You can do better with less money. You can do things without those donors if you can just meet people and be honest and do the work for the people. The problem is a lot of these elites that run for office, they're lazy. They want the easy way. They've been told this is how you do it. This is how you get your money. Look at the life you get to live. They don't want to do the work. We've got to eliminate that personal incentive, and we've got to get people in there that will do the work for the people. That's the only way that you get rid of the,
Well, I think Bernie did a lot of that, but then he quit, right? I mean, soon as Biden started to win, it was my friend Joe, or
Yeah.
however he speaks with that stupid accent, right? And the other guy was saying, "I beat the socialist," over and over and over
Right,
again. I mean,
right.
hi Joe, and he was like, "Screw you, I beat you." And
But
when we needed him in the White House, right? Like, because everyone thinks that FDR was this amazing, progressive, right? And in his first term, he really sounded like Joe Biden. He was going to balance the budget, keep the spending under control. And then, Huey Long came out of nowhere,
I was getting ready to say,
Huey,
yeah.
and he said,
Because
"Wait
that's the point. You had to have that outside pressure.
yeah,
And that's the only way we got FDR to where we got FDR. Everyone acts like he's like the greatest thing. He thought it all up. He was forced because he was scared of losing to Huey Long.
that's right."
Like,
Share Our Wealth program had 7 million people that were going to vote for it.
right, and it was going to be. It would have made the New Deal look weak.
It did.
But they did the bare minimum to win over the support. And again, you know what? If that's where we end up, if we could get concessions that way, but all of these Democrats and progressives, they want to start at their concession place. They want to start with the New Deal and then go negotiate with Republicans. And at some point we've got to understand, and we've got to have somebody who actually takes this power, because in this system, now again, this is not the ideal system, but within this system that we're in, you have to have a little bit of a strong man, strong woman, strong person that can articulate your plans. Like I said, Marianne Clater, if she were to take over the West Virginia Democratic Party, that would be the greatest thing that would happen to the West Virginia Democratic Party, But again, you can't hope for people like that across the country. You can't hope for leadership like that because they don't even win. There's not much option for them. And those that do come through, they're a fluke, and they can be easily absorbed or destroyed. Right. So, it's just a really messed up situation that we're in, where we've got all of these power dynamics that come into play in all of our lives, and how we navigate as regular people working, just trying to stay civically engaged.
Well, it's part of the problem,
difficult,
isn't it?
Right? What is it?
That they don't really want you to be civically engaged.
No, they only want you to vote. Once you vote,
right,
you're out for 4 years or 2 years or however,
so
and then
take my town,
check
for
back in with
example,
you.
right? I mean, they have the meetings at 7:00 on Thursdays, so they make it very hard for you to get there. They make it very hard for you to have any, time in the meeting, right? They don't give out any information. I mean, we laughably had a meeting for a budget where they didn't give you the budget to talk about. They just read out the announcement of what the budget was. Now, normally budget meetings, if you've been to them, right, in town, everyone gets a copy of the budget and they kind of go through it, line by line or section by section at least. And people can ask, really important questions like, well, why don't we have more money this year than last year in this? Did something radically change? Not in my town, right? I mean, that's how a lot of towns want to run. A lot of people want to run that way, right? They want you to come on a Thursday in November, vote them in, and then just leave them alone. And most of these meetings will take 5 minutes because they do the bare minimum, and you showing up is an annoyance. And I mean, that's really, I think, what we have to get away from. We have to start really making the democratic process easily accessible to people.
Right. I think that's key. And for so long it was incentivized to not be part of the process,
Right.
And all of the talk is about, trusting in the leadership and all of that back whenever I was a kid. And they did. I mean, for a large portion of people, they became like, okay, what's going to happen is going to happen. And I think we're seeing the result of disengagement from the time of like civil rights. People just started getting more and more complacent by whatever means. I don't know what that is, if that's technology. All of this happens. I mean, I sometimes get amazed, when you really start to think about 100 years ago, we were nowhere near where we are now. So that's a lifetime, a good, solid, long life for somebody, 100 years, right? That person who was alive 100 years ago to now has seen massively radical changes in the way things are done, the technology that we have, the way we communicate, right? I can't separate where we are today, even 20 years ago, because of this rise of technology, it feels like there's opportunities here, but also, like there's more opportunities for distraction, sabotage, whatever it is, to be ineffective. It's just a new world to navigate, and we've all got to figure out our way. And these leaders are just not making it any easier. The oligarchy, if you will, the tech leaders, whatever you want to call tech bros, working with Washington to restrict access to information. I don't know. We're just not in a great place ultimately.
No, we're not. But I think there's a lot of room to move out of it. I mean, maybe I've been sounding like I'm on the negative side of this conversation, but I think what we have to start looking at is really building the foundation that you want, not ignoring the electoral process,
right,
but not putting as much faith that it's going to absolutely be the cure-all, because I think that's what we did. If we just got the right person elected, if we just got the right group of people to advise them, if we just got this, and this, and what we should really do is we should look at, well, maybe if I can get the right person at a local level where it's a lot easier to influence things, maybe we could get the right group, we could get the right motivation, and if they can help support the right, mutual aid foundation that we have, we can maybe start building it up. I mean, it's going to take a long time because we've unfortunately done a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But I think that's where.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of people don't want to do the little races. You get people. There's this guy here in West Virginia who just totally, I think, co-opted the progressive momentum that was here at one point. Zach Shrewsbury ran for Senate last time. Lost to his primary to Glenn Elliott here in West Virginia, and that's the way that it feels that they come in and they want to do the biggest, most impressive thing, right? Where, and I'm not saying you've got to work your way up. I'm saying that we have to have people who want to do just this job, who want to get into politics for that local position. It's not a stepping stone. You're not looking to get to the next bigger piece. You're just happy to be in your town, in your region, whatever it is, doing the work to make change. I told somebody this today. I was talking to an old friend I haven't talked to in a while. And I said something, and I said something about KPIs. Just not even thinking, because I'm like on all these boards and I'm like do all this work, and they said KPI, and I said, oh, keep progress indicator. I said the problem is I do too much professional work for free. At this point, like 10 years ago, I was doing home improvement work, blue collar work, and then I got involved with Mary Ann Clater, and now I've just gotten into all of these spaces. Doing this type of work, but I'm doing all of that for free. I'm still doing, my real work as well. It's just that my political activism has taken me into these spaces where I end up doing this other work. But that's the point. I don't want money for it. I've never profited off of it. I've done thousands of hours worth of work for free.
Wow.
Because I believe in doing the work that I do. And that's what we need from people, is that you're going into it for the right reason. And so even if you feel like,
you mean that I shouldn't get a casting agent afterwards, like Kamala Harris just got
See, and that's the other, the immediate turn to making money from your position and from what you were. That's part of the corruption. That's part of what drives people to do what they do. They say, well, even if I lose, I'll get my Netflix deal, right? Like the
Obamas,
right? Well, they didn't lose. Obama never lost. I got to give him that. But that's
because he never tried to have the what is it, the 26th Amendment changed so that he could have another term, or is it the 24th?
Let's just be thankful. I mean, Obama was my first real political disappointment. I came into because my first election was 2008, and I had just how many friends I lost in the war. It was I don't have a lot of friends. 4 is a lot, and it was terrible. It was traumatic. It was horrible. And so Obama comes in. I'm done with this war. I'm done with George W. Bush. I am like right there with him, 100% of the way. 2008, yes, we can. I was right there, all the way. Then in 2010, he's not going to end the Bush tax cuts. Oh, And then, by 2015, when he's drinking the Flint water, I'm just like, what was this?
You mean
What did I
pretending to
think?
drink the Flint water? Not, he didn't really
Okay,
let
that's
that.
fair.
He's like, hell, I'm not drinking that.
No, and that's why
He's like,
that's what I was like. By that time, it was all performative.
and then he said that great
Yeah.
phrase during that same speech where he drank the water. I lived in a lot of crap housing in my whole time, and I must have had a little pink chip here or there of lead. Didn't hurt me anything.
Yeah,
like,
you
really?
just can't do that. And like, so there was a whole generation of people.
They're like drinking a paint can worth of it a day.
Right. Oh, that's a great point. There was a whole generation of people like me that was their first taste. We thought we were getting something real, and then that's the first big Democratic Party letdown. And since then, we've only had Trump, and then Biden, and now Trump again. And throughout that period, they look at Biden's presidency. Literally, the first thing they did was allow procedural barriers to keep them from passing the minimum wage. And then everything after that is we just don't have the power. He's not a king. He's not a dictator. And it's like, here comes Trump with just a few little strokes of his pen, completely rewriting just how we do things, And if we would have taken a little bit of that effort to promote human rights, to promote economic policies that impacted the American people broadly, we wouldn't have even had a second Trump presidency.
No.
I don't believe that we would have, because people would have not been as desperate.
I mean, if you look at the
numbers, so hopeless as well.
If you look at the numbers, right? I mean, what is it? 32 million voted for Trump, and 31.4 voted for Biden, for Kamala Harris, and like 1.7 or 1.8 million didn't. I mean, the largest group was that not voting was like, no, that's percentage wise. The largest group was 36% who didn't vote at all, right? I mean, who they just decided not to engage with. Either party couldn't engage with.
Well, that's my point. So that's why when I'm talking about, okay, if there were a mass movement for reconstitution, it's those people that would finally be coming forward and saying, hey, I didn't vote for you, but we got to get this thing together, because at the end of the day, we're all in this country. We're all living it, right? And I just feel like there's a real disconnect for all of us. And it's...
If you've seen absolutely no change in your life between any one of the leaders, right? There's really no incentive to continue voting.
Right. And that's where the disconnect comes from. It's that you don't listen to me, even if I vote for you. So why am I going out to vote for you? And that's why we have dwindling voter base. That's why the Democrats justify running right. Well, you're not voting for me. I had to go look for the voters that were out there, rather than seeing the possibility of regrowing that base, building a movement around your political party.
Yeah, but they don't want them.
They don't want. That's exactly right, because it's not about the work. It's not about the work. It's about the personal gain, and it's about playing within the system. I mean, I didn't realize how much of this was just a social club for a lot of people, and then for other people, it's the way they make their wealth. So the people who are in it for the social club don't even realize that they're boosting up all of these people. They think that they're helping. They think they're making a real change, and that they're making friends along the way. And a lot of those are really good people. Like, I've met so many
they're good
rank and file
intentions.
Democrats that are so sweet and so supportive, even if they won't do it publicly. But
they have some good intentions,
nice,
but they don't really do anything good.
And they don't have a lot of strategy. They don't have the ability to strategize the way that they need to.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I think they're just stuck in this idea, because, I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of them these days. They're stuck in this idea that they're so frightened that if they don't vote Democrat, something terrible is going to happen, and they're going to get this. And see, those people that didn't vote for the Democrat, now we have Trump.
I'm talking about the leadership, though.
The leadership.
The leadership is, right. Well, I guess I'm like,
their strategy is the milk
officials
everybody
within the party, right? Like, here we have the West Virginia Democratic Executive Committee. I'm sure it's the same structure across the land, right?
Yeah.
So these people, there's 105 people or whatever that are elected. And of those people I'm talking about, some of them have been the nicest people I've ever met. They genuinely want to do things. They say they genuinely want to do them. They seem to fully understand where they want to go. But when it comes time, like, okay, so whenever I bring my challenge against the Democratic Party, right? They decide, well, I'm gonna vote against Seth, because that way I don't make enemies. That way I don't get a target on my back, and I can keep doing the work I need to do. So I'm just gonna vote against Seth. He'll understand, no big deal. but they don't realize that and again, I don't think I ever had a majority on my side, but if 20 of us would have at least made some sort of a stand rather than 0 of us, we might have at least been able to impact other people's decisions. When it looks like there's a solid narrative, it does a disservice. And so those people, they don't have the broad strategy to think, okay, what's the risk versus reward? It's always immediate, like I say, reactionary. Well, the immediate risk is too high and the immediate reward is too low. They're not ever willing to go beyond that. Very rarely will someone take a stand and play a long game with these people. I've never had anyone short of Mary Ann Claytor here in West Virginia that's been a real ally for the long term. They all see it. They all talk about it. Anybody I talk to says, yeah, you got some good points, Seth. They don't ever make the stand, though. And there's a disconnect between their intentions and their actions here. And at some point, they've got to confront that weakness. I think it's weakness. Mm-hmm. You say it's fear, and fear, okay, whatever. If you're not willing to take your stand, don't be surprised when no one's taking the stand when it's your turn. Because I know several people now who are being targeted, and they're depressed that nobody's standing up. And it's like, you didn't stand up either, buddy. You at the time did the same thing they're doing, and now you don't understand how they can do it.
Well, they thought they were part of the club, so that the club wasn't going to turn on them.
Exactly. But it's just, and you know what, broaden that out to where we are in America right now, Trump voters. You are that person, right? And you're thinking, I'm on Trump's team. Yeah. I'm going to sit back and enjoy everything he does to these enemies of mine.
Yeah, that's
not
right.
understanding that it's going to be you as well. It's going to affect you as well, because there's a holistic picture that's interconnected of American life, and we're all in this together. As much as people want to say we're not, those policies, they're wide reaching. You can't remove immigrants from every place in America and then there not be an impact on the local populations. It's not going to happen. They're a part of America, believe it or not, people. I mean, so that's the point I'm making. Everybody wants to have these grand ideas, especially the right wingers I'm talking about how easy it would be to fix if we would just get the right people out, or we would target the right people and punish them for what they've done that's wrong. It just doesn't work that way. And
well, now he's telling them that they're going to get some of this money back that wasn't fraud in the first place. I mean,
well, from my reading of it, wasn't it like the top, it was only the top tax earners, was it definitely wasn't the poorest Americans that are going to be getting the check if they were to do it, which they're not going to do in the first place.
Well, no, I'm talking about now he's trying to claim that, because of all this fraud that he's uncovered, Doge, right, which wasn't fraud.
Wasn't it $5,000 checks is what they were, what I saw a headline about today.
Something about that.
Yeah, it's not going to, first of all, that's not happening, I don't think.
No.
I would be very surprised. And if it does happen, it's like I said, it's not going out to everybody. It's not they're not those people. That's just not who they are.
But I was just saying that it's just interesting that the fraud that they're really talking about is just the stuff they don't want to pay for anymore.
Right.
It's your Social Security disability payment that they've decided. Well, you're 300 pounds. From my understanding, hit the bricks, Jack. Start working out, and then you can get a job. Oh, that's
my understanding. They were looking at the descriptions or the items and just deciding based off of that, and not doing any deep research into the impact, just cutting things to cut them. I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm sure there's a lot of bloat, so we might not even feel the impact right away, which is going to only make things worse because people will think, look, we cut all of that and everything's going smooth.
I don't think there's as much bloat as you think in a lot of it,
I maybe misspoke in terms of impacting a Trump voter here in West Virginia's life, right? They're not going to see the long-term impacts necessarily of cutting funding to medical to fighting whatever it is in some foreign country, because it doesn't directly impact them right now, right?
Those programs, right? Those programs are probably the ones. But on the other hand, USAID used to take a lot of farm aid, right? That was basically a farm aid program for our farmers that they rolled into it, and then they spent it out, in Ethiopia and wherever else they wanted to, turn into a nice American friend.
Right.
So that's going to hurt.
No, they're going to be hurt. I mean,
tech companies are going to be hurt because they were using a lot of the tech stuff to monitor and who's growing and who's not growing. I mean, but
That's true.
I guess
That's
those
true.
programs are going to stay. I mean,
I guess I'm thinking about my aunt, my Trump supporting aunt down in Little Mannington, West Virginia, and is she going to? It's not going to really register, is what I'm saying. Like the Trump voters, just the average baseline, kind of just their voters. I don't want to disparage I love my aunt, of course, whatever, but it's not like she's critically engaging with any of this stuff in the first place, right?
no.
So she's seeing she's like those Doge employees seeing the description. Oh, that doesn't impact me. That doesn't impact me. That doesn't impact me. They found fraud. They're believing it at first. And because, again, they don't see that immediate impact, my aunt is not going to see any of this and say, wow, this hurt me yet. It's going to come. There's going to be something that will eventually, or the ramifications of what they've done here will, but it's never going to hit her that this was tied together so directly, so early, right? So I think that she'll support their actions longer than somebody who gets hit with it right away. And so that's where I say that you're going to have some of this disconnect, I think, between
I would have said that the disconnect would be longer, but he seems to be going at such a rate and with so many programs. I mean, they've already noticed it in the Parks Department.
Hey, you know what? And
I read a whole article that said that the reservation system's in tatters. People are canceling because they get there and nothing is ready for them. And
right. Well, and that's, in a way, that's good. If they could manage this better and be more, like I said, where you didn't notice it as quickly, they could slowly enact these things more effectively, maybe. I do think that they've got to be cautious. I think it's the same thing. It's the same mistake the Democrats made in thinking they could get away with not raising minimum wage, for example. They don't fully consider the way that people will react when it's finally impacting them. So yeah, if they go so far as to do something where even my aunt, right, is like, wow, why would they do that? I don't understand. They're gonna face similar problems. I mean, it's not like they're immune to it if they make mistakes. So I mean, that's what we've got to hope for, is that they do make those mistakes that enable us to educate. We've got to be constantly prepared to point out to people how these things aren't ideological. Without like I said, the people that you're probably not gonna be able to change a stranger's mind, right? But if you know somebody, I think if you've got the ability, try to pressure them. What else are we going to do? I mean, there's very little that we as individuals can do right now on a interpersonal basis, other than try our very best to keep these lines open with our neighbors, with the people around us who probably for you and me living in a more rural setting, we're
laughing at them
isn't
our best strategy.
What is it?
Probably being like the kid from The Simpsons that's always, ha ha, Nelson.
Right. Well, that's my point. And listen, I'm not immune to that. There's a very big part of me that does that. I laugh. I do. I get the joy that people get from seeing people that you think deserve it get what they get. Get the same thing. But it's the same. Okay, think about this. It's like Marjorie Taylor Greene. How many supposed allies for trans people make the joke that she looks like a man? And they think somehow that they're owning her, but all you're doing is legitimizing that trans stereotype, and you're hurting trans people when they hear that joke. But they want to have that gotcha so bad. They want to be able to throw it right back in their face and get that momentary feel good.
I will say this though. I mean, for a woman that wants to say trans people are shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z, she does all the things that she says women shouldn't be.
She's a hypocrite. Surprise!
I know. It's like, wait a minute, lady. Aren't you doing the very thing that you told everyone that, like, trans women only wear these kind of tops? The next thing you know, you see her in that kind of top. You're like, whoa, shit.
Well, but that's the thing, is that they want. I don't know what it is that drives that. I don't know if it's legit. I see. This is the point. I don't know how much of that hate is legitimate from her, and how much of it is just performative. I think it's all legitimate myself, but also.
And I think she performs a hell of a lot extra. But
that is the question that people end up asking, right? How much of it is legitimate, how much of it is weaponized. And I don't know. I think you have to, I think I'm with you in that you have to treat it all as legitimate because it has the same outcome either way.
She's but yeah, I mean, every time I see an article where she's a picture of her where she's like saying that only a look at these trans women doing this, and then the next thing you know, she's like posting the same exact thing. You think to yourself, do you really not see that you're doing the same exact activity? And if you're a real woman, why does it matter that these people are doing it? Right? I mean, they're women too now, so deal with it. And the other one who scares the hell out of me is that what is her, Alana Paula? You know, the one from the one who claims that she's a Messianic Jew, but she turns out her family was Catholic and her grandfather immigrated to.
The name's not ringing.
She's from Florida.
I might know who you're talking about. I think I might.
She's the one who's in charge of releasing all of the paperwork.
She's in office now.
Yeah, all the paperwork on JFK.
Okay.
She's going to review it and then release it. I'm like, you must not want this actually to be released because you picked somebody who literally has a Nazi in the family that can be blackmailed like all the time.
Look, if they were to really I don't know. I got to avoid certain topics to not look like a crazy person because I don't know what I feel about JFK, but I don't know what I think.
But I'm just saying, if you were super serious about releasing that information, right? Would you pick someone with that much baggage? Right, you pick like the squeakiest clean.
It was also like Trump said he's going to get to the bottom of the UFO thing and let everybody know. I mean, if there even were something there, if there is, I'm not saying there is.
Well, we already got to the bottom of the UFO. You know what? We know they're there, right? I mean, come on, the New York Times did it.
But I'm just saying he's not going to release anything. Is my point? Like it's all smoke and mirrors here.
Of course, it is.
People fall for this,
and that's why you pick somebody who's got baggage, right? So you can just be like, hey, look, if you release anything that's serious, we're gonna let the dogs out on this one.
And people think that's a conspiracy, and I don't know how organized it is, but to think that there's absolutely no kind of pressure to not do certain things from other people within the government, that's foolish to me. I don't know how deep it is. I'm not going to say it's a conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of institutional pressure for certain things to not be
released.
Of course there is. It's just the way it is, And if it doesn't benefit Trump directly, what good does it do? Okay, let's say there is something. What good does it do? Does releasing that there's a UFO that they don't understand or whatever it is, blah blah blah, would that help Trump? Or does the ambiguity help Trump? Right? Same situation here. There's no altruism with this group of people. There's no desire to inform, to give people any kind of real truth.
If he can't make it look like a total Democrat conspiracy theory, right?
Right. If he can't weaponize it, there's no reason. Right. And that's the whole problem. I mean, with somebody like Trump and everybody who believes him, I mean, I just can't. In his entire career, there's never been a moment where he's been honest and been shown to be.
I think he was pretty honest in that one tape where he's talking about grabbing the everybody, right? I think that was pretty.
I think that was honest. That was. I mean, he didn't know he was on tape. In fairness,
I know, but that's why he was being honest.
But yeah, I mean, it's disappointing to me that.
And when he said during the first part of his campaigning in 2015, he was like, "When I buy a senator, I expect him to do something."
Well, and he was right too about he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for. Nobody. That man is. That's what's so scary about him is that these people will turn a blind eye to all of that. So it's like when we're talking about what could make a Trump supporter really turn, it's difficult because there's a lot that they'll ignore just for that. And so back to the point about Democrats enjoying getting that gotcha. Same thing with the Republicans. Man.
Oh, sure.
They just want to see people suffer. And as long as they see the people that they don't like suffering, they're willing to take a little hit themselves. And that's something we have to be aware of as well.
They're willing to really bloody themselves. I mean, there were people there that were getting ripped off by his campaign, and they were still donating more money.
Didn't he do a crypto scam?
He just did it, yeah, a big one. Bigger than Javier Milei's over in Argentina.
But we're all talking about him, right?
Well, yeah, that's because.
Well, I mean, he's a tool too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a supporter of that guy. But my point is that this should be a bigger story. People who do this kind of scam are usually
Yeah,
You know,
in prison. But here's the big thing, right? What did he open up? He just declared that basically the presidency is for sale.
yeah,
Right? I mean, here it is, boys. What we'll do is we'll create this fake coin. It'll last for 25 minutes online. Then we all pump out of it and get real money that doesn't
right.
fluctuate like this, and leave these poor bastards swinging.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't under. And then he goes and he's got this new rule now where he can say we're not investigating crypto,
Yeah.
and crypto's fine. It's not in our purview, boys. Which is crazy to me. But the other thing is this: most of the time, those crypto scammers, the people they steal money from, get upset. I don't see any backlash here from his fans. It's wild.
They just, that's how it happens sometimes. It's like, really?
I don't.
You just stole your life savings, but
right.
You're good with it. I mean, if Biden took $1 from them, right? If they dropped $1 on the ground and Biden took it, they'd be like, he stole my life savings. Well, it was $1, dude. You dropped it. He didn't know you. He's senile. He didn't know it was yours. I'm sorry. Here's another one. Yeah. But these guys just like, oh, he just took my whole life savings. I feel better for it. He'll know what to do with it. It's better in his hands.
Yeah, and there's probably people that think that. I mean, honestly, like that's the level. That's why I say when we're dealing with people, if they can't change, you do have to try to distance yourself from them and realize.
Oh, I see them. I know them. It's hysterical.
It's crazy to me. I don't. Personally,
it's hysterical in the sense that you just can't. You have to laugh, otherwise you just go insane.
You laugh or you cry, right?
Yeah. I'm usually laughing from the crying because the logic is just the things they will say to you.
Well, and it's so frustrating too whenever you lay out facts and you make a solid case to somebody and their whole argument just boils down to I don't think so. and that's it. Like, what are you going to do to that? It's like, okay.
You just spent the whole afternoon. I mean, first they spend the whole afternoon telling you that how facts are what all they care about, right? And then when you're like, well, but this is actually what's happening. Oh, well,
we did that.
I'm done with that.
When I was trying to help you in Wyndham, sway some public opinion. I spent a lot of time researching local ordinances and New York state laws, trying to make a real legitimate case, and then it would just turn into, well, you don't even, I don't even know
you. Live here.
You don't live here. I'm not listening to you. Like, oh, okay, all right. It's like at a certain point, we all need to really be reliant upon facts, evidence, being able to prove something, or at least test something, right? Like I'm all for, if you've got an idea and give it a shot, like see what happens. Sometimes you can't predict everything, right? You got to see it in action to see what happens. Test pilot programs everywhere. I say, really.
Well, you should test and see what's going on. Not here. I mean,
not anywhere practically, and
this town went overwhelmingly for Trump.
Oh, surprise! I'm shocked.
No, I'm not. But I mean,
that's the how it goes.
Thing.
But that is the fault of the Democrats, and it's not because they center DEI and trans people. Because first of all, they don't. It's because the Democrats legitimately do not care about rural Americans because they don't think that rural Americans benefit them in any way, and they don't materially. And anymore, they don't support them in the vote. So they've completely written us off, right? Mm-hmm. I'm in West Virginia. We've got a very active, progressive populace. I mean, really, there's a lot of people that have progressive policies. They're just shut out of everything politically. We don't have any voice here. I mean, if we try to engage, we're pushed off to the side. And so there's a large population that would be willing to do a lot of good work, but they aren't accepted into the Democratic Party. And these aren't even leftists. I'm just talking about legitimate people ready to work, but because they don't fall in line, they're not easily controlled. They get pushed out. Legitimately, get out of here. You are stealing money from your club or whatever they accuse that one guy of, without any evidence. But that follows him around. They don't care whether or not it's just about embarrassing you and making sure you don't come back into their club.
Well, I'll tell you this about Wyndham is that they just stopped running. There's not even a Democrat on the ballot half the time. So, I mean, if you stop running, I mean, you can't have change.
And see, that's to me, that's just laziness. They've got enough people in these state parties to do the work, but they don't want to. They're not there to work. They're there to go have a
Well,
crappy dinner and hang out with their friends, every 6 months or whatever,
well, they've
right?
decided that that they're going to win the areas. I mean, and they keep on winning, right? The
Yeah.
areas that they do, they've got a pretty good lock on everything up to like Dutchess County.
But that's the other thing is that they just so willingly abandon. If
Mhm.
they have these grand ideals that they believe are universal and good
Mhm.
for everybody, then to willingly abandon so many people by just not even engaging or giving people the alternative,
Mhm.
how can you take them at face value that that's what they believe, as a leadership? Because a lot of this does come down to, like, here in West Virginia, one of the biggest things that we talk about during an election year is trying to find people to fill seats. And last year, Mary Ann Claytor was on the recruitment committee,
Mhm.
and they were meeting. And apparently, at this one meeting, she had the new state chair, Mike Pushkin,
Mhm.
was telling everybody what great recruiting he was doing.
Yeah, didn't
And
he
they
also
were
switch over to the Republicans
no,
halfway
he's not
through?
switched to Republicans, no, but he's
Not
the
yet.
state chair right now. He's the state chair
Yeah.
of the party. But he wouldn't
I know
tell
one
them
of your senators did, or House of Representatives at the local
recently.
at the state level. Didn't she switch?
Mm, I feel like you might be right.
It was
I've
either
not
that or
seen
North
it.
Dakota. It was either that
It might
or North
there's I
Carolina.
don't know that there was one recently. I feel like if there was one recently, I would have
Oh,
clocked
well,
that.
recent
So
might be
unless it
2 or
just
3
happened
years.
very recently. Well, we had Elliot Pritt switch parties in
That's it.
2022.
Yeah, there you go. It's like 2 years ago.
2023 now. Yeah. That was Elliot Pritt, and he's actually sponsoring anti-trans bills now
Well,
himself.
well, that's good. I mean, at least he's out of the party. Let him do that
Yeah, it's
over
true.
on the Republican
Well,
side.
that's the point. That's what I've been saying. Is if these people want to be bigots, let's put them over where they're taking and controlling this party, acting just like the Republicans in a lot of ways, and keeping people who want to do the work from doing it.
Mhm.
And for what purpose? At the end of the day, this party in this state is dead. There is no power to be had here whatsoever, and they're not doing the work to rebuild that power. Right. So these people at this time are not going to make any changes. They're not. They don't have the ability. They don't have the Selena Vickers is this lady here who, like, basically runs the party because she has a millionaire from the DNC that was in the Clinton administration literally helping her. He meets with people here, makes them promises. He gives them things to. I mean, the people who have aligned with her and done her bidding, they have gotten ahead. There's a senator here in West Virginia who was just one of the ones clapping for anti-trans bills, Hollis Lewis. He he was he helped her. He's a black man. He helped her fight the minorities on the affirmative action committee. And because of that, his name was shortlisted whenever they had replaced
Mhm.
somebody who had retired or stepped down or whatever had happened to him, and he got it. Oh, surprise, surprise! This that's how it works. And so, in his mind, he did everything that was justified. What did he lose? Oh, our affirmative action plan doesn't have Seth's input. Big deal. It's just the way that they
Oh,
contextualize and
sure.
justify everything that they do without realizing the structural stress, whatever you want to say, that they're putting on the groups, on these minority groups within, and these people that they should be standing with, they're helping to marginalize in the name of promoting themselves. And
Well, that is the name of the game.
right, and
And most
that's
of
what's got to change, though. That's what
yeah,
we've got to work on. Is you're talking about local level,
yeah.
and that's it. People like that,
I
we've
mean,
got to hold them accountable and force them
well,
either
that's the
out of
problem.
office or to do what needs to be done.
That's the problem, right? I mean, if you only show up every November, second November of an election year, right? Second
Right.
Tuesday or whatever the November, and vote and then disappear. Well, you really don't have any pressure to put on these people.
Right. And pressure these days is not, I don't know, it's hard. It's really hard.
Well, it is hard, but I mean, at the local level, you got a lot more. Like, I mean, let's think of it this, right? On an off election, we maybe get 400 voters. So if you can sway 50 voters, you can win an election. You can
That's
force
a great
something.
point. You know, the data. That's a
Mhm.
big thing for local candidates. If you're getting into it, don't overlook getting your voter data for your district.
Oh yeah.
The amount of the help that it can get you. I know a lot of local people though, they don't go that route. They don't think they need it. They're just going to
No.
go out and talk to the people. But being a little bit more targeted, you can make some strong
Well, you're going to
gains.
waste a lot of your time on people that aren't going to change if you don't see the trends that are happening in your community.
Well, and the thing is, they can go out there and do all the things they want to do to show the community they're there for everybody. But
Yeah.
also, you're going to want to target, like you said, if there's 500 people that voted in this election in your district, you're going to want to target those people, especially the ones you think might be able to be
Picked
flipped.
off.
So, like, we've got to be strategic and really thoughtful in how we do things, because it's like what I'm talking about reconstitution. Ideologically, I know exactly what it looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it actually looks like is really, really confusing and up in the air. And it's the same situation. You've got to be very detailed, and the details matter, right? So you got to get a good strategy there, and people need to be. I'm with you on that. I think that people take a good hard look at yourself and say, is it something that I can do?
Yeah.
And would it be beneficial? I mean, don't think about what you can get from it. Think about what you can. What changes are going to be seen from it? Because I think that you're right. Right.
A better town, or a better county, a better this, a better that, and then everyone is much better off, right? If we have better services across the board,
right?
You're gonna,
right, and that's the point, right? It's so many people are not doing that right now, and it's as simple as doing.
So I was at this Polish evening, right, this weekend. That's right, because I am 3/4 Polish, even though my name doesn't say it. And here's what happened. And I was talking about politics, and the first words out of this person, who's quite, in touch with the community. He was a long time New Yorker, New Jersey guy that came up, and now he's moved up, and he's part of the whole demographic that no one wants to really talk about, but is our key demographic, which are the second homeowners that become full-time homeowners once they are, retired. He says to me, well, you said you wanted to do local politics. How do you plan on getting people out? What do you think you can do? I said, well, we can do a lot of things. I mean, first of all, we can fix the roads. We can have increased bike trails, all these things that we could bring in but it's this idea that I don't think people really look at their local government at the very local level and say, oh, that's going to do anything, because we've been trained for so long to say that everything has to be either state or federal. And that's where things get done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And there are limitations for sure, but the ability to work around those limitations, that's the goal. It's work.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, but as long as you do the work with an end goal that isn't corrupt,
well,
you can get a lot more done. Right?
I have to say the one problem with local government is, and probably something that we should really look to change, is the fact that most of these local jobs are part-time. So you get two types of people. You either get retirees who are well off, that want to be that feel they have something to give, or you get business owners that can afford to do it and take the time off and do it. And if you have that, well, then you've got a certain level of corruption already built into your system, because these people are focused on material gain from it. I mean, if you're a local businessman and you run the town, well, sure, you're going to make sure that, things are greased in such a way that, your buddies in Yorktown and your budget and looks a certain way. Those are your priorities.
Right. Well,
I think we have to start saying that, bite the bullet and say, look, we got to have, unfortunately, making this full-time job does make them professional politicians. But every so often their jobs get reviewed. And if you really vote, right, then you can have a real say. You can say, look, you didn't do a good job as a full-time politician. You might want to think about, I don't know, used car salesman or something.
Well, I think that so you're never going to get a perfect system that way, and I think that you're right in the regard that you've got to provide. If you're going to be full time, you've got to
Mhm.
provide some sort of salary that compensates. But there is that risk, right? Like, okay, if I'm taking 4 years off to do this job,
Mhm.
getting back into my field
Mhm.
may be quite difficult, right? But there's no way to guarantee you that you're going to be able to stay a politician either.
No.
So that's one of the reasons we don't get good people running for office. You're right.
No.
And like I said, the way around that, I don't know.
Well,
Because
I think
you're still going to have the people that once so even if it pays well, once they lose the job,
Mhm.
what are they going to do? So they might not be willing to risk that the first time. They're not going to risk their income the first time
Well, I think that
to run.
if you're actually halfway effective, right? Don't you keep on winning? If
You
you've
would
done,
think, but
I mean,
sure.
That's
true.
sure. I mean, short of doing something that really annoys everybody, like running naked down the 4th of July parade, all drunk, painted green, and saying that you're the Statue of Liberty as the town supervisor. If you're doing a pretty halfway decent job, it seems like that people just say, yes, you can do it.
Right. Well, and there's something to be said about a good leader in that regard, or a good whatever you want to, like you're talking about a town supervisor. If they're doing a really good job, there's no reason to replace them.
Well,
so there is that aspect of it. But
I mean, if they're responsible if they're truly responsible, truly
Right.
transparent, fulfilling those goals, right?
That's why you got to find the right candidates for those
Yeah.
jobs, and that's the whole point. I mean, it's
we
difficult.
don't have that at this point, right? Because, but again, that's a lot of structure, right? I mean, that's we've structured the government that way in New York to be as non-transparent as possible. But I mean, there's a lot of rules that you can play. With the home rule, you can change a lot of things that just people don't want to do because
Well,
you know
that's
what, they
the
get a
point.
power trip.
We're at the point now where anybody, whatever state you're in, wherever you're at, I don't know how I want to say this. We're at the point now where everybody, with wherever they're at, needs to be looking at how can we come back from where we've gotten, right? There is and I don't know, come back's the right word, were we ever there to begin with, but how do we in this moment use the resources we have where we are to be the most effective and cover the most people in terms of protecting their rights and protecting. At a certain point, we've got to transition from what is a government? Are they supposed to take care of the people? At a certain point, there are certain things that we've got to in order to be maintaining our status. Like, okay, you want to use these labels of third world country, first world country, developed nations, whatever. Yet you don't actually take care of everybody in your territory. That doesn't make sense to me. We're judging these other parts of the world because they're not developed, because we've been exploiting them for centuries. And then at the same time, we're exploiting people in our homeland too, right?
Oh yeah.
It's just, that's the way the system is. That's what we've built it upon. So, there's got to be something that's done to right these wrongs that are just accepted. So many people are willing to overlook the systemic violence that is enacted against millions of people every day, and we can't anymore. I don't know how that looks like. I don't know what that looks like really. But that's again, that's my, like, if you're gonna, like, that's my biggest problem, is that I will always say I don't really know.
True. Well,
I've got ideas. I would love to see some of these things pan out, but there's so many moving parts that we always have to be adaptable and just constantly.
Well, we got to start by trying them.
Yeah,
we got to start.
We try what we can, and then adapt as we move on. I mean, none of this is set in stone. You're not going to have anybody who can 5D chess this out to where they've got the exact positioning they're going to have.
You see, now you don't believe that Elon Musk is the smartest man ever to talk to. I mean, I just heard it on Joe Rogan, so it's got to be true.
If that's the case, then I'm sorry, I apologize. But no,
you should apologize, because Joe Rogan knows. Of course, just because he spent the first part of his career like sticking bugs in people's face, on Fear Factory.
It's crazy how Fear Factor you wouldn't, if you would have told me that this guy was one of the most influential people that helped get Donald Trump elected, I wouldn't have believed it in a million years. It's just not even on your radar. But here we are. We're living in strange times, and like I said, we just got to constantly be vigilant and head on a swivel, looking for where we're at the current time and what our next best move is, because everything on the rules aren't even consistent, right? No. So that's why we've got to be prepared for whatever comes and just be flexible. It's going to be tough. We're all going to be facing a lot of hardships, I think, coming in the next few years, decades, whatever. And where we go from here is
centuries.
But as long as we can try to build these networks up and be with each other and help each other, then it's the best it can be. We just got to do the best we can do.
Helps to try. Unlike the progressive guys that I know that just ignored that suggestion, like, ooh, let's go back to handing out flyers.
I like that flyers idea now.
Yeah, that's good. That's going to really help.
Promise, right? Yeah.
Are you being deported? Here, have a flyer.
Oh man, it's brutal, man. But I get it. Really, I do get the fear, guys. So like, don't be scared though. Like, it's going to be terrible either way, and like you're going to live in fear and not do the thing that you do, feel guilt, and then eventually it's coming for you anyway. We've all got to make a stand. This is that moment in history that we've all been preparing for, and it doesn't have to be as bad as it could be. We've just got to be strong and together.
I think that, I don't know what could they say. Are you really disrupting them if you're just bringing food? Hey man, I'm just a delivery guy. I just volunteered. I just volunteer with this group. They're a poor group of people, and I just bring food to them. I don't know. I don't ask questions.
It's charity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how we structure it. That's how we structure it.
A lot of times, playing ignorant really messes with these people who are authoritarian and fascistic. I mean, if you can avoid confrontation and play ignorant while subverting their systems, do it. Don't unnecessarily put yourself in harm's way either. That's a great point that people.
I wouldn't run around saying like, right? I'm going to go hide them, right? I would lie and say,
get out of here. I'm protecting these people. You want to be as subversive as you can.
We have a group that they don't have their car broke down, and we give rides to people who are in need of this stuff, and we deliver food.
Yep.
We don't ask questions beyond that.
Right.
The worst they're going to tell you is like, you have to ask questions, ask for papers. I said, I wouldn't even know what a fake ID looks like if you showed me.
Right. I mean, because right. And again, that's great advice for everybody. I mean, here in West Virginia, I'm not running across too many ICE agents, but
Oh, but there's actually been ICE all around Greene County, New York. We've seen them.
They've done raids in West Virginia, just where I'm at. It's not.
I know, but I'm just saying about these little podunk towns like where I live. They've actually come up here to pick
because
people up.
Some of these small towns have a significant population of immigrants because they'll find a safer place. They'll come and they'll congregate there because they've built a neighborhood, a community there, and then you're getting these feds coming in and just totally destroying it. And like I said, you're tearing away. I don't care if these people think it's not. That's the fabric of American society right there. It's all together. We're all together.
It is. And with that, I think we'll have to wrap this up. It was great having you again, Seth. Anything you want to plug?
Just keep an eye out on the nitrofiles.com. I don't know when that's coming, but it's coming.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Mark Hunt is now the state auditor of West Virginia. And the fact that this has gone so under the radar for so long, just kind of whispered about. I think people need to really know who we have in there, who you're trusting to oversee your money and make sure everything's reputable.
He could definitely use it. He could definitely use somebody overseeing what he's doing. I mean, he did start a cloning cult.
Well, he didn't start the cult. He joined forces with the cloning cult.
Okay, so. I thought he started it. I thought the cult was separate, and he put the cloning and the cult together to make one.
They had the cult and a science organization. He founded a business in West Virginia under false pretenses, bought the equipment that they were going to use. So
he's the middleman.
They were kind of partners, right? Like if there's a cult leader, he's kind of like he wasn't a follower, let's say. He was more of a
swindler.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't say it.
Come on down. Come on down.
But it's very important because this
is the basement. We'll go clone somebody.
Right. And this is somebody that's actually in a very it's a significant position. People don't think about the West Virginia state. A lot of state auditors don't have the same power. They're not elected. But in West Virginia, it's a pretty serious position, and he's got a fair amount of sway in how things are handled in terms of like public lands and the Board of Public Works and stuff. So it's not an inconsequential position for him to have. And honestly, he'll have it for as long as he wants it if people don't hold him accountable for this. So
That's right. Well, that's great. I'm just curious. You think he's going to be a big RFK fan now that he's getting rid of all those regulations?
Who's that? Oh,
Hunt.
He's got,
now he's not breaking any laws.
I think they might be best friends. I'm just saying.
RFK's already signed up for cloning. Junior.
Genius.
2 of them.
Don't give him ideas, Connor. Please, let's avoid this if we can. Mark Hunt,
right,
Mark Hunt might be a dangerous person, legitimately. I think that when everything comes out about how far they were willing to go and what the implications were of that medical research they were doing, I think people might come away saying, was he going to listen? This is what they'll ask, not what I'm asking. I'm not saying this. Was he willing to let people die and go unreported for his medical experimentation? It's the obvious question that you have to ask, because he had told nobody about it. And if they had started doing experimentation and things went south, are you reporting it?
I don't know even how you report that without going to jail.
You'd go to jail. You'd go to jail. So I have to assume if he was willing to lie about everything else, it's just really good that they didn't. The FDA said the lab was in such a disarray that they weren't concerned any serious experimentation had happened. That's how bad it was.
I would have been worried that it did.
Yeah. Oh, and there's no way to really know. I would like to reach out. You know what? If anybody out there knows any Raelians, send them my way.
All right. Thank you, Seth. It's been great having you on.
Thank you, Connor.